with Murdoch, actually, in his father. And therefore, I think there's a bit of a lack of that sort of novel in Australia. But Murdoch is, king, and he's starting to become King Lear. The gods save it all up, and then they drop it all on you in a hurry. And at least I hope they are. We don't want it to happen to us, but what makes us successful makes us vulnerable. What makes us strong is precisely what makes us vulnerable. All our virtues can bleed away, or all our strengths can bleed away into weakness and vulnerability. And if it weren't for that, there wouldn't be any writing. The writer, too, doesn't want it to happen in his life, but he or she can't stop writing about it. But it would be good if we could have a novel about an environment. Imagine a glamorous young man or woman who goes to be environmental officer for a timber company or a mining company and so on. I'm not for judging those. I like metal and newspapers as much as anyone, but and I've wasted a lot of paper in my lifetime. But there must be great dramas in there.
Maybe you can repeat it?
Yes. How consciously does one write in Australian idiom and for Australian readers? Well, if you're writing in Australia about an Australian subject, like these nurses, then you not only you can overdo Australian idiom to an artificial extent, of course, but Australian usages, like, I've had the most problem with foreign editors, with Australian usages like the use of Australians say, when asked, say, how they are, they say, well, I had an operation last month and the doctor said it was the worst instance of he'd ever come across, etc. They're unfamiliar with that usage, and they want to punctuate it differently than I'm punctuating. Remember I had a quarrel once over the word walloper for a cop. And an American editor wanted me to say cop. You could tell from the context that what the word meant, but they still wanted it changed to cop. So you tend to stick up for that sort of thing. With the nurses, I've dredged back for usages that were around when I was a kid that are no longer in use. For example, the peculiar use of the word flash. In the country town that my family comes from, the worst crime you can commit is to be flash. And it means to think you're eaten a bit, another Australian, to think you got tickets yourself, as a gentleman said this morning. And I've gone back to those usages. I've tried to talk like my aunts in the case of these nurses. A good word that's gone out of use, skite. You don't hear the young saying someone's a skite, whereas it was perpetually used in our childhoods. And so I think of Australian idiom in those terms. If an Australian's talking, go back, go for those cadences, go for those usages. We use the word reckon a lot. We used to use it more than we did now. So we share most of the English language with other people, but it's not the stone, the crows and the crikeys and that amaze other people. When I used to, for the sake of living a little while in New York, I used to teach writing to graduate students at NYU. Some of them, most of them never published, some of them did. And what most confused them was the usage, go on, saying, which means you don't say. An American would say, you don't say. If you say to them, go on, you know, my grandmother died yesterday. Go on. They think you want more information. And similarly, good on you. They confessed when I left that they thought it might apply to clothing. Looks good on you. You know. So it's not the more exotic usages, such as I went and saw this tax officer and he had a face like a deep-sea racing prawn, as invented or a face like a smashed pie. It's not the inventive ones that confuse people, it's also the ones that we don't know are peculiar. So I think recently that great writer Kate Grenville wrote or said something about this matter. But my answer is always, if we could sit, when I was a little kid, through an English B-grade movie before the matinee on Saturday afternoon and put up with English idiom, and then sit through a main feature with Gary Cooper saving an entire town from a gang of desperados in the presence of some voluptuous girl like Rhonda Fleming. If I could put up with their idioms, then they could put up with ours. The use of the word, the one that used to confuse me in the idioms in the movies was rain check. I'll take a rain check on that I imagined a raincoat that was checked. You know? With the growing internationalization of the English language, I think kids now know what a rain check is, and that's not a bad. I mean, but they got their whole idiom now, and so there we go. Well, I think there might be a plan to do that after it opens, to do a wandering round and say, you know, the reason I've got this terrible novel on the shelves is because I was, you know, had a night out and we drank too much, etc., etc. And he said to me, I'm going to write this cheap novel and make a fortune. I'm not going to write serious novels anymore. So this is his serious novel, and this is his cheap commercial novel. And the serious novel did better than the cheap commercial novel. Now here you can see there's a lot of history. Dispossession, the Irish in Australia, the Dig Tree, Shaw's history of convicts, and the library wasn't well, it got messed up. So right in the middle there is James Service's Stalin, for no reason, it's just got in there. There's Russell Ward's The Australian Legend. There's Hunter and Phillips' Journal of the First Fleet, there's Lenin and there's Frankenstein. So but they've all got a reason. The reason Stalin is there is because my last book was about a Russian Tsarist prisoner who escaped to Brisbane. It's based on a real case. It's called, and again, if you look at the back of that book, you'll see that a lot of the source material is documentary from the Friar Library in Brisbane, at the University of Brisbane. So every book has its story. Here's The Fatal Shore by Robert Hughes. Well, Robert Hughes, I wrote the review in the New York Times for Robert Hughes, front page review, and it was a glowing review, and for some reason he's liked me ever since. So every book, or a lot of the books, have a story. Yeah. And we'll do that one day. Thank you.